public participation. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please come forward to the microphone, press the little button for the red microphone, and we ask you keep your comments to about 3 minutes, and I'll open that up.
Good evening, Council. Denny Gillin at 2545 Oakville. Two issues tonight. The first one is just a comment on the recent decision of CRD directors to approve a new sort of open policy on communications with citizens across the region. I think that's a really welcome initiative from this organization, which in the past has not necessarily been transparent and tends to produce very voluminous, exhaustive, long documents. So I think it helps us all in this region if the CRD can continue to be more transparent. So, Mr. Mayor, you sit on the council, so congratulations, and it's a very good step in that direction. The next issue I want to talk about tonight really is linked to the CRD, so, and it's linked to item on the agenda. It's the letter from the CRD, I think it's 13C, Regional Food Land Access Program. So I looked at this last night when I had nothing to do, and I thought, oh my God, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and I must commend you for doing your homework before you come to these meetings, because I was just, almost put me to sleep. And what I was surprised to find when you go through the documents, and the most interesting document in the package was probably the letter from Mr. Jason Austin, which is also part of our package tonight, which provides an analysis of what the CRD was saying. And I was concerned because I think the document the CRD produced, and I don't know the background, and I know that Sydney and North Saanich and Central Saanich indicated some support for this some time ago, and they were coming back with the final document, but I'm not sure what Sydney bought into previously is what the CRD is delivering today. And when I looked at the agenda, I wasn't sure if there's going to be any discussion by council on this item, and I don't know if any decision is required. I know we're asked to fill in a form, or we're asked to produce a form. I would urge council to sort of maybe step back and figure out, is this what we really need to do? I think some of the things that I was concerned about is that the original proposal called for the creation of a regional farmland trust and a farmland acquisition fund to acquire and supply land. What the CRD has produced is something that goes beyond that, engaging NGO, creating a structure, hiring staff. It's something I think the CRD has a tendency to do from time to time, and it's not necessarily the best thing to do. So my question and my hope is that staff or the council will step back and figure out, is this what we want? Is it going to give us our result? Or are we somehow going to be going down the road where municipalities, including Sydney, will be required to cover costs coming out of this if this creates profits? The other thing is this proposal would create a situation where new farmers would be given preferential access to these funds, and you have existing farmers that wouldn't be involved. So it's a big, complicated file, and I would hope that we take the time to go through it carefully and figure out, is this what we want to do to address this issue? Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. 2 points. In response to your 2 points, thank you for the positive feedback with regards to the, I think, what has improved CRD transparency and openness, and I will be commenting on that briefly in my mayor's report. With regards to the food lands, yes, it's a big report to tackle, and we will, I will, or one of us will speak to previous council support and really what that support was for leading up to the information that we have before us this evening. So
thank you.
You're welcome. I'll ask for a second time.
John Blair, number 2, 2312 Henry Avenue in Sydney. Mayor McNeil Smith and all members of council, I'd appreciate the efforts of all of you to mitigate the effects and problems suffered by tenants in Sydney when they lose their homes to development. Thanks also to Corey Newcomb of our town staff for his frank and well-written report on the town's limited resources in this area. It appears that this situation has now also become a concern to our provincial government, with the Housing Ministry announcing that we can, quote, expect to see a second phase of reforms this year, including compensation and relocation guidelines for tenants whose buildings are being demolished, unquote. This is good news in a province with great disparities of income and with the highest child poverty rate in Canada. So thanks to all of you for your work and thoughts in this area.
Thank you very much. I'll call for a third time if... Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Warren Wolf, and I live at 2093 Wood Violet Lane in North Saanich. So I'm a neighbor of Sydney, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak. What I came to do is to voice the residents of North Saanich. There is a proposal being put forward to the council from Eaglehurst Homes for a link between the southern part of Ray Creek Park and the northern part. And it just seems like a very logical link to have there. I understand that there will be a meeting of officials from Sydney, North Saanich, and Eaglehurst on Thursday, and perhaps what I'm saying tonight will be reflected in those discussions, and I hope that progress will be made in the decision towards that trail. But just to maybe bring out some points that may not be discussed, the trail actually is offering a great boon to residents both of Sydney and North Saanich. The residents of Sydney will have access to over 300 meters of trails that exist in the Ray Creek Park in North Saanich. They would also have access to over 300 meters of access to the rain gardens along Deerhurst. And of course, you'd be welcome to come and observe the Airy, where there's all kinds of activity right now. For the North Saanich residents, our access to the park and to the trails would cut from about 1.5 kilometers along the dangerous roads of Kenora and down to about 200 meters. We would then have access to Green Glade. We would have access to Weiler and the overpass, so that we could then make the choice much easier of whether to walk or to drive to Sydney and compete for parking places. It seems like it's a win-win situation for residents in both communities, and we would like to put forward the idea that the trail is just a natural extension of the park. To us, there is no boundary. You know, when we walk to come to Sydney, to the shops, or to the beaches, or to the library, it's just part of our neighborhood, and we hope that you will see it the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments and for your input. It has been noted. Thank you. If no one else wishes to speak, I'll bring public participation to an end and seek approval of our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sorry.
Just a slight amendment to the agenda. I
Oh,
have
yes.
a notice of motion that I'd like to present this evening.
Sorry, I meant to mention that. So Councillor Fallot does have a notice of motion that will go under 17A. So if we could just redo that and ask the mover and seconder to, if they could accept that amendment.
Yep.
Thank you.
And vote in favor of the amended resolution. Those in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you. We now have two sets of regular minutes, or minutes to approve. The first is from our regular council meeting of April 23rd.
I'll move adoption of the regular council meeting, April 23rd, minutes as revised.
I'll second that.
Discussion, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And B?
I'll move adoption of the special council meeting from April 30th, 2019. The minutes be received.
Second.
Those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll now move down to the mayor's report. And I have a number of things this evening. The first is following up on one of our presenters in public participation this evening. The CRD has its 3 board meetings once per month on a Wednesday. And at the CRD board meeting, main CRD board meeting last Wednesday, we had a recommendation from the Governance and Finance Committee with regards to transparency and communication. And effective next month, the CRD board will be having a dashboard on a monthly basis for its rise and report that come out of in-camera meetings. So CRD has rather long agendas. The minutes can be long as well. And a number of reports, and it was felt that that would be helpful to people to see the things that come out of in-camera meetings. The second and larger challenge will be there will be a monthly summary of topics that are approved by CRD or discussed by CRD. Again, with the agendas being as long as they are and the minutes, it's felt that this will help. And while the agendas are posted on the CRD website in advance of the meetings, last Wednesday's agenda for the CRD main board was over 1,000 pages. And while they are videoed, our meeting last week I think went for 3 and some hours. And the minutes, it's felt that these monthly reports will be very helpful to residents throughout the region in seeing the priorities that the CRD is addressing and the things that the board is moving forward on. The second thing I'd like to report out on is on Saturday, May 4th, a week ago Saturday, we had an excellent forum on healthcare in our community. This was an idea that's originated with the 4 mayors on the peninsula, Saanich, Central Saanich, North Saanich, and Sydney, ourselves. We agreed to host this forum jointly with the Saanich Peninsula Hospital Foundation and the Canadian Federation of University Women. We had 35 tables with 10 people each. They weren't all full, but there was well over 300 people in attendance. We had excellent presentations from Karen Morgan, Executive Director of Saanich Peninsula Hospital Foundation, Shauna Walker, the Executive Director of the new Shoreline Medical Society. Presentations from Dr. Ambrose Marsh, formerly long-term Chief of Staff at the hospital and now Medical Director for Saanich and the Gulf Islands. And we also got to listen sort of in a living room conversation style from 3 of the newest physicians that were recruited in 2018 to the peninsula. And they gave some interesting insights in terms of what attracts them to this area and how the interest in why they came here and how they can interact with the hospital and the clinics. There's a lot I could report out on, but there's 2 excellent websites to go to if you weren't able to attend the forum. That would be the Saanich Peninsula Hospital Foundation's website. In particular, they have a tab called Physician Shortage. And you can get information there in terms of what they've been involved in and what they're doing. And the other is the new Shoreline Medical Society. So the Shoreline Medical Society is a nonprofit society established by the Saanich Peninsula Hospital and what is now Hospital and Health Care Foundation. And they have information on how the 2 new clinics, the Shoreline Clinic in Sydney on Bevin, and the new clinic that opened, I think, just before Christmas or just after Christmas in Brentwood. And they're looking at establishing a hub medical clinic somewhere close to the Saanich Peninsula Hospital. So those 2 websites provide helpful information ongoing. I'd like to move to last Thursday. All of Council was pleased to attend a tour of the Aranza rental apartment building on 4th Street between Beacon and Sydney Avenue. It's 58 rental units, studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. 29 of the 58 units will be below market rentals. They were very impressive in their design and the way they function. In addition, we had a tour of the downstairs, which is a 7,500 square foot new daycare facility, indoor daycare facility in our community, combined with a 4,000 square foot outside component. They'll have spaces for 77 children. They already have 98 on a waiting list, and they hope to open August 1st. The rental units are still renting as we speak. They had commenced renting. The first people should be moving in on June 1st, and we look forward to their success. Tomorrow, starting at noon, I'll be meeting with the other municipal partners around the capital region at the South Island Prosperity Partnership luncheon. As has been reported out in the past, Sydney has contributed this year its 4th year of annual funding to the Prosperity Partnership, and tomorrow there will be an announcement on the awarding of 2 $10 million grants to small communities in Canada by the Federal Minister of Infrastructure, and we won't know until we're live stream with them on the announcement. So please, everyone, cross your fingers and wish us well. That $10 million to the multimodal Smart Cities Initiative would be most welcome in our region. This Friday at 9 a.m. we have the grand opening of the downtown employee and public parking lot. Really exciting to have 167 new employee and public parking spaces. It's thank you to staff and Public Works. There's landscaping. There's a special blue line, so you know where you should be parking, and we look forward to that opening on Friday morning. With regards to our community safety building, I'm pleased to report that we're just this close to opening. Our staff will begin responding to emergency calls later this week from the new community safety building. We'll be having a ribbon cutting for the volunteer fire departments and staff and others on June 21st, and then we look forward to having a community open house on Canada Day, and we decided to combine serving ice cream as part of the Canada Day festivities from that location as well. So we look forward to the end of this week when we begin service from that building and celebrating later on. And lastly, BC Ambulance Service won't begin responding to their emergency calls from the building. I believe it's until earlier mid-June. And the last I have is our library. We've all seen it under renovation and the temporary location, and they will be having a soft opening beginning next Tuesday, the 21st, and we're not quite sure when we'll do a ribbon cutting there. You can peek in the windows now. They've finally taken down the inside. It's a complete retrofit of the building, and I've talked to some of the staff there, the library manager, and they're very excited at the improvement on the library in our community. And that concludes my mayor's report. We'll now move to council report. I understand, Councillor Garnett, you have a report.
Just something very quickly from the Sydney Museum and Archive Society, just because I know Councillor O'Keefe likes to know these kind of numbers. Heritage Canada Museum's assistance plan has confirmed a grant in the amount of $14,300 for the Chief Dan George exhibit, so that's a big help. And for everybody in the community, this is going to be the program that's going to be coming out. They're just putting the final touches on it. It should come out towards the end of this week, I believe they said they're hoping. And they'll be able to get these at the Chamber, Mary Winspear, the Information Center, and hopefully there'll be some other locations. So June 21st, 10 to 11, everybody mark it on their calendar. I think they're hoping to have either part of Beacon or 4th Street, and they're going to have drummers and singers and from the local First Nations, and it should be a great time. So I hope everybody can make it. Anyways, try and find one of these around town, and it'll give you all the breakdown of what's going to happen. And I think it's going to be really an impressive day. So thank you.
Councillor Powell, did you still have?
No, I'm good, thanks.
You're good, thanks. Sorry, I had one last follow-up on the second item I mentioned with regards to the health forum. As a follow-up to that forum on healthcare in our community, the four mayors will be meeting with the individuals that I mentioned presented, just to talk about possibilities and supports that the four municipalities on the peninsula may indeed provide for improved access to healthcare on the peninsula. Any ideas that come out of that will be coming back to our respective councils for discussion, and we'd then move forward in discussion with staff before anything definite moved forward. I'll now move to committee reports, and we have item 10A, which is our minutes from the committee of the whole meeting of May the 6th.
I'll move adoption of the minutes of May 6th committee of the whole meeting.
Second.
Discussion, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries unanimous. And we have two recommendations.
I'll move the recommendation that council schedule an afternoon meeting to continue discussion regarding terms of reference for an economic development committee.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I don't know if I may, Mr. Meyer, there was also some discussion around the question, I know during the council, or sorry, the committee of the whole meeting around the economic vibrancy piece. I'm content to leave it out, just to make sure that it's something that we acknowledge that perhaps in the process that we would include in our discussion.
Okay, so I'll call the question on the, sorry, Councillor Wayne?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After the committee of the whole meeting, I was thinking about the meeting that we proposed, and the intent is to have a discussion that will help us move the terms of reference forward. And if we have a quorum of council there and it's not an open public meeting, there's a transparency issue, and we would need to take very careful notes and make sure that we repeat everything when we actually have a council meeting to make the decision. So I think it would be actually quite a bit easier if we have a public meeting as opposed to a closed meeting. And the easiest vehicle for doing that would in fact be the select committee simply scheduling a meeting. There's nothing to stop us from having all members of council participate in that. We could even go as far as appointing all members of council to the select committee. But that would be the, I think, the easiest way to deal with the transparency piece. The motion that's in front of us doesn't preclude that. I just recall commenting at committee of the whole, the expectation it would be an informal meeting, and I'm thinking that that is probably not the right thing to be doing.
So I would support an amendment to the motion, or a separate motion, that we do appoint the remaining councillors to the select committee on for the review of the EDC for that meeting. So does a question through to Councillor Chad, were you considering a motion after this first, or?
We could, I don't know. I also heard Councillor Wainwright suggest that an appointment may not be necessary in order to have everyone there to participate. And if that's the intent, we may not need the motion.
In discussion with staff, we should, I think we should move forward with that. Mr. Humble?
Yeah, the consideration of appointing versus just having councillors attend that currently aren't on the select committee. The benefit of potentially appointing is that if there are any subsequent follow-up meetings that may be necessary, or future discussions that maybe all of council might want to participate in, it's just a cleaner approach. But yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to make a second motion then once we're done with this one.
Yeah, I think the fact that the committee does make motions, that the councillors would be there to vote. In discussion at committee of the whole with regards to this, I noted that in our strategic plan we have an action to do this year, which is review the town's role currently dedicated to fostering economic vibrancy. And I think this would be a good opportunity to take a portion of this meeting to discuss that. So again, I would consider that as an amendment or a separate motion. So if I don't see an amendment, we can call the question. So I'll call the question without amendment. All those in favor? And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
I would like to move that the balance of council be appointed to the Economic Development Commission Select Committee for our next meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to
Move the second
the
recommendation.
second recommendation. Councillor Chad, coming out of the minutes.
Sure. I'll move the recommendation, one, that staff bring forward a tenant assistance policy for council consideration. Two, that when purpose-built rental buildings are redeveloped in the future, staff continue to raise the issue of tenant displacement with the property owner, developer, and advocate on the tenant's behalf. And three, that the issue of tenant displacement be included in the discussion of housing policy as part of the development of the new official community plan.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, I've misplaced a section of the agenda here. So we'll move to item 11A. We have the Sydney Housing Needs Assessment Project, staff report dated May 7th.
I'll move that council support the preparation of a housing needs assessment for the town of Sydney in preparation for a comprehensive review of the town's official community plan, and that staff provide overall project management for the project and report back to council in accordance with Local Government Act requirements following completion of the final report.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Now move to item 11B, the 2018 financial statements, a report dated May 3rd.
I'll move that council accept the town's financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2018.
Second.
And discussion? No discussion. I would just like to thank staff. As is indicated in the report, the community charter requires every local government in BC to prepare annual financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles as established by the Public Sector Accounting Board. And these statements, once prepared, have to be approved by council. And I want to thank staff for the clarity of the statements. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And the last staff report, we have an MOU with regards to twinning of BC Hydro EV station in town parking lot E, which is at Bevin Avenue and at Bevin Avenue.
I'll move that the MOU between the town and BC Hydro for the DCFC station project at 2330 Bevin Avenue be approved as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the benefit of the audience, the town currently has one DC fast charging station, and from what I've observed, it's fairly well used. This is an opportunity for a second DC fast charging station, which really is quite welcome for EV users, and it's at no cost to the town, so very appealing.
I have a question. Councillor Rintoul.
Perhaps if I may, Mr. Mayor, through to staff, I note on the responsibilities of the host that the host will make the site available for installation and operation of the station 24 hours a day all year round for a minimum period of 10 years. With respect to this particular lot, would you clarify for me the 24-hour aspect and whether or not our practice is in keeping with the MOU?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul, absolutely, it does comply. It's open 24 hours. I think there's a 3-hour limit on for use on that particular parking lot, but the proposed MOU is in full compliance with the restrictions associated with the parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Just curious, a question to, I guess, to staff through you, Mr. Mayor. How long does it take, so these charging stations take, how long are they parked there for?
Councillor.
Is it more than 3 hours?
I'll defer to Councillor Wainwright. I'm sure he would know. I'm sure he charges his vehicle there.
So, the DC fast charging is a high rate of charge. If you have an EV with a very large battery and an extended range, so I've got one that's a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and the range is about 450 kilometers in summer. That will completely charge the battery from flat in an hour and 50 minutes.
Oh, okay.
If you have a shorter range vehicle, like an older model Nissan Leaf, such as the town has, it'll completely charge it from flat in about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So if you're a traveler coming across the ferry and you need to recharge, you can stop for a coffee or lunch in Sydney and probably make it to Duncan easily. So it's undoubtedly appealing for travelers, and you know, given our location relative to the ferries, it's undoubtedly going to be well used during the summer. And the 3-hour limit would be in excess of, I think, pretty much every EV on the road actually needing. Like, they don't make batteries that big.
Councillor O'Keefe.
One more question. So do we keep information on how frequently those are used? Like, is there I don't know, a meter or a method to determine how much those are utilized?
I might defer to staff on this, but I believe that BC Hydro maintains that data, and I think in the past we've been able to access that data and do analytics, take a look at reports, etc. So
I'm just wondering whether that's something that we would, monitor in the future to kind of determine the usage and whether they're highly used, and so we need to have more.
Just from reviewing past reports, I think we've seen a significant escalation in their use over the last several years, and so it's definitely an upward trajectory in terms of the use of the charging stations throughout the municipality. So it's becoming certainly more prominent, and the number of EV vehicles that are out there, certainly gauging the use of the charging station here at the town hall. It's almost always being utilized at various parts of the day.
So I gather that this has this is a proposal initiated by BC Hydro, and so we're saying yes to it. And
Correct.
I guess what I'm also wondering is, I can't recall in any of our plans whether we're also looking to add additional stations throughout the town, whether that's in any of our plans.
Not in our immediate plans.
Okay.
Indeed, we were approached by BC Hydro for this, and I believe when that charging station was put in there, it was put in with the capability of twinning it, and that was something that I think the Council of the Day, I don't know if they requested, but certainly indicated that it would be nice if there was the possibility to twin that in the future. I know previous charging stations, some of the other charging stations, we have been proactive in applying for grants and looking at those opportunities, and I think we'll continue to pursue those in the future as well. I think per capita, Sydney's done very well in terms of the number of charging stations that we have in our municipality of our size and population. So I think we'll just continue down that road.
Councillor O'Keefe.
One more? I'm just wondering, on the BIA parking map, do we know whether they identify where those charging stations are?
Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an EV, so I'm well aware of how this works. Probably 99% of EV owners use apps that there's an online map, plug share, charge point. There are actually a variety of them that tell you where all the EV chargers are, and that is updated basically every time a new EV charger comes online, because the chargers, modern chargers, are actually connected to the internet, and they broadcast. So for example, if I'm coming off the ferry, I can tell whether somebody's already plugged in and using that particular charger, or whether it might be available, and whether it's in service, etc. So your typical EV driver is not going to be looking for a paper map.
Oh, okay.
They'll have it on their smartphone.
I guess what I was just thinking is, for store owners, if they get a call saying, hey, I'm coming out to Sydney in my electric car to come to your store, is there a place nearby? Whether, but you're saying that they have that online?
Yep.
Okay.
Typically, if anyone actually is going to need a charger, they'll be thinking about where the charging stations are before they make that trip. So it's not something that you need to think about putting on paper maps.
Councillor Wintula.
Through the mayor to staff, if I may, I recognize it's an MOU, and so it's fairly high level, broad strokes. Contractually, at some level, is there insurance, some sort of indemnification for the town in that these assets are on town property? Is the town protected in that manner?
Yeah, I believe there would be, and I believe that would be part of the next subsequent agreement. The MOU is just basically the high-level agreement that indicates the parties will work together to move towards that more formal agreement that will address those elements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question through the staff. So, in terms of this being a twinning of an existing site, was there any discussion? I mean, does a twin have to be right beside the existing, or could it be located elsewhere in the community? And if so, did we consider if there would be a location? I'm just thinking, if they're spread out, is that better than if they're all together?
Mr. Mayor, when the original EV station went in, they made allowances because they need the electrical feed for it, so it wouldn't be possible without great expense moving it. So it's designed to go back in that same location.
Okay, thank you. I think this is very positive. I think Sydney was certainly a leading municipality in the region when it established the town-owned EV stations a number of years ago. And BC Hydro, as noted in this report, has this program as part of the Clean BC program, which is designed to provide British Columbians with more clean transportation options. I think they probably are monitoring the use and see a need for additional capacity and are investing. They're doing this around the province, so choosing Sydney for a twinning is, I think, great news. So Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually was looking through my folders trying to address Councillor O'Keefe's point about whether the town was involved in the strategy of where these things went, or whether it was just Hydro that picked. And I remembered that from a previous meeting we'd had, that we'd received a report from the CRD that they have their CRD level EV and electric bike strategy. And Sydney had mapped out where they were prioritizing, I guess in partnership with BC Hydro, where they were going to put new stations. And they had picked Sydney for an additional fast charger. And I feel like they might have said, there might have been like another, like one or two more that they'd had on Sydney. And then they'd picked other ones down, the peninsula and through Victoria. So it looks like it's kind of a regional strategy. And it was in that CRD document, which I cannot find now because it's embedded in an agenda and I can't remember which day it was, but I'm sure if we go to the CRD webpage, we'll be able to find that EV and electric bicycle infrastructure planning project again and be able to see what they were coming up with. So this is actually very interesting that they were able to move that quickly now that they've got Clean BC in place and starting to realize that strategy already.
Thank you. Thanks for that update. We have the motion. I'll now call a question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to correspondence. Item 13A is funding for the Victoria Sexual Assault Centre. We have a letter from the District of Saanich dated April 23rd.
I'll move the recommendation that Mayor Wright, on behalf of Council to the Premier of BC, requesting continuous provincial funding to the Victoria Sexual Assault Centre.
I'll second that.
And discussion? I'll make a comment. This came before the CRD board last week, and we supported it. That is the CRD board writing a letter to the province. The Victoria Sexual Assault Centre, established in 1982, so almost 40 years old. It has an annual budget of approximately $1.3 million. It gets a little less than half of its funding from government sources. Unfortunately, a recent announcement by the provincial government was to provide not a lower level of funding, but a level of funding of $200,000 per year, but only 2 years of funding. And it's felt with the staffing, they have I think 20-some staff, 23 or 25 staff, and some 50 volunteers, that they needed longer-term commitment with regards to funding to maintain the programs that they're providing for the region. So I certainly support this, and without seeing further discussion, Councillor Fallett.
Just one other comment. Unfortunately, we do need a facility such as this. One of the important, or the most important part about this particular clinic is that everything can happen in the one place. You have the counseling, you have the medical staff, and the police. For the victims of sexual assault, they don't have to go to a hospital, ER, and then to the police station. And it also brings the police officers back in the mainstream of, once they've done their reporting, back to work. It puts them back on the street a lot faster by using this. So I don't think we have an option. I think it's imperative we do support this. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Additional comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Item 13B is with regards to the plaque for the Community Safety Building. We have a letter from Steve Price dated April 23rd, 2019, and an email from myself following a meeting that I held with Mr. Price, dated April 17th. Councillor Wainwright?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the letter is basically asking that this plaque be installed, and
sorry, if I could, on a point of order,
Yep.
could we have a motion before we discuss? Or?
Sure. I'll move that we receive the letter for information.
Second.
Please continue.
Okay, so as I say, the letter is basically asking that this plaque that was made, I guess last fall, be installed on the new community safety building. And Mr. Price had met with the mayor, and the mayor had explained, and the explanation is included in that email, that the plaque wasn't to be installed. And I support the explanation that the mayor has made, but I'd actually like to expand on it a bit. Typically, when a plaque is installed as on a building, when the building is dedicated or the grand opening, there are two conventions about what goes on the plaque. One is typically a recognition of the officials that are there to dedicate the building. Essentially, it's the people that do the ribbon cutting, and that is one common practice. And there can be other stuff on the plaque as well, but typically it's this building dedicated on such and such a date and the people that did it. And the other convention that's often used is to acknowledge the individuals that made significant contributions to the project or the building. So in this case, the plaque actually is doing neither of those things. So it's not following the the conventions that are typical. If it was going to be the people involved in the opening ceremony, it would undoubtedly include the new mayor, and at the time the plaque was done, it wasn't clear who that was going to be, and the current mayor is not acknowledged on it, and I'm not sure who else is going to be involved in the ribbon cutting, but basically it didn't follow that protocol. And if it's going to be the people that made significant contributions to the project, I'd point out the project really started with Mayor Larry Cross, and that council did all the groundwork of looking at the need for a new fire hall, whether the current building could be renovated on site, what was needed in the way of a new fire hall, and then going through the site evaluation and starting down that process. And there was quite a bit of time spent, and it would not be fair to ignore the contributions made by Mayor Larry Cross's council, and the plaque does not do that either. So I'm of the view that the plaque doesn't appropriately follow convention. This is something different, and the names on the plaque are the former Mayor Steve Price's council and the fire chief. And if a plaque was going to go out of that nature, essentially acknowledging the previous council, I have some concern about my name being on that plaque. And I'll say for the record that I was completely unaware of the proposal to make a plaque when I was on the council the previous term. No knowledge about it, never asked about it. It was never discussed at council. I'm not sure if other council members are aware of it, but given the circumstances around the project, there was quite a bit of controversy about the authorization for borrowing without consent of the electorate. There was controversy over the location that was finally settled at, and I don't want to, I supported that location. I'm not criticizing any of the decision-making associated with that, but there was also quite a bit of controversy about the cost overruns relative to the original estimate. And you put all those things together, and I really do not want my name associated with commemorating that kind of controversy. So if it was following one of the conventional protocols, I could accept it, and probably my name wouldn't be on it. But it's not following the conventions, and I think those are also good reasons, over and above what the mayor has said, to not support putting this up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wainwright. Is there anyone? Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't repeat what Councillor Wainwright has, or attempt to repeat yet. Just to say that I was unaware the plaque was ordered, and I think it was previous of the then mayor to order a sign for the installation on a building that wasn't completed during that term. So I'm in favor of what Mayor McNeil Smith, with his email response and with his suggestion. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor O'Keefe.
I guess my feeling overall is that whether it's been a convention in the past to have politicians' names on buildings, I just don't see why that should be a convention. And if there's other things that we end up doing within our term, I would hope that I don't want my name to be on anything. I think as politicians here that we're on council to be good stewards of our citizens' money, that we're here to make sure that infrastructure is built to meet future needs. And it's the citizens of Sydney who paid for this. So if anything, if there's going to be a commemorative plaque, I would see something like, this building was provided by the the taxpayers of the town of Sydney, and we appreciate the good work done by first responders in our community. But to have our personal names on there just seems to me a bit much. So I'm in support of not putting up the plaque.
Councillor Rintoul?
Yeah, I'll just briefly offer some support to Councillor O'Keefe's comments. I concur generally with those statements, and I hope that the message is received to the professional firefighters and the volunteer firefighters that this issue in no way relates to our appreciation for the excellent work that they carry out on behalf of this community. I think it's somewhat unfortunate that that may be lost in all of this, and so I'm sure we all concur. Our thanks go to firefighters, and I'm pleased that the people of Sydney have enabled them with the facility that they need to do their job.
Thank you. I'll now call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll move to item 13C, which is the Regional Foodland Access Program. We have a letter from the CRD dated April 24th and a rather extensive and thick report.
I'll move the recommendation to refer to staff for a report.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor O'Keefe.
I guess just a question about the amount of work required from staff to do a report. And I also, as the speaker during public participation, was concerned about what this is gonna all lead to and commit us to, especially in Sydney, where we don't have any farmland that we would be, or public land that I see us providing to the project. So I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, when we're asking staff to do a report, I think it's good to have the information, but I'm just wondering how extensive and how time consuming that would be.
Mr. Humble.
So, indeed, there's a very lengthy feasibility study that staff would, I guess, have to delve into and review. Certainly, answering some of the questions with respect to, does the town of Sydney have any municipal lands that could be contributed to a CRD operations associated with the Foodlands Trust? I think that's a very quick response and answer. There are no lands in Sydney that certainly I can think of that would be suitable for that type of operation. So it's my understanding that the previous council did support in principle, I guess, the concept and of this. Where this has been taken, though, in terms of looking at the potential type of trust that's being contemplated and the establishment, I guess, of a new service and what the associated costs might look like. There's the potential that they could be fairly significant depending on the number of municipalities that end up participating in a CRD operated Foodland Trust. So I think that if staff are going to report back to council, it's going to be just with a very quick summary and look at providing perhaps some options, but I don't think we're going to come back with a lengthy report. I anticipate something fairly quick, and council can then discuss it and see where they want to take it.
Okay, thank you for that. We have three speakers, Councillor Fallett, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will concur what Mr. Hummel said regarding the previous council, and it was in principle. This, as I was going through this document, it is quite an intense document, and sort of the first thing that came through my head was, do we really want another layer of bureaucracy to deal with something as important as an essential service such as food production? So that concerned me a little bit with that proposal. And then to liken it to being farms trust, land trust being similar to parks, I don't see the correlation with equating those two. But anyhow, as I went through this, I segued off into dear old Professor Google and looked up farmland and tenancy, because essentially what this is coming down is tenant farming. And so that led me to some interesting information and sharecropping and tenant farmers and feudal system and the whole bit. But also to bring it forward to up to date, we do have a problem with farmers being able to afford the lifestyle of farming. It's different today, and so I think we have to think outside of how we have been thinking regarding farming. I don't know if the first preamble of this is something that I can see a fit. I also question how we in Sydney, with all of the existing land being used up here, we don't have any land to give up to it. So I really don't know what to do with this. Really, long and short of it is, I don't know what to do with this piece of information, but I do support that we have to support our farmers. I don't know if this is the way to do it, though. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess in regards to the staff report on it, I'm just looking at their letter from down in section 1611, where Sierra Fair clarified what they were asking. Their ask today was not necessarily to approve this consultant's report in full, which I have many of the same misgivings about. It was to assess whether there is a desire. What they're trying to do is assess whether there is a desire to have the CRD operate a Foodlands Trust in partnership with a nonprofit organization, which is broad enough that it doesn't have to mean exactly the way they've laid it out. So I guess it is the question of whether we feel it's kind of whether the NGO model that they have presented, that they've already investigated, is in fact the best one for the CRD or not. And I feel this would come down more to the CRD staff. If they were saying, we don't have capacity, we'd actually rather work with the NGO if we're going to front this money for it. We'd rather have them deal it, then I think that would be for them. And then of course B would be whether any municipal lands could be made available for inclusion, and for Sydney that's very easy. So then I guess it does come down to, within the CRD, if this is going to be a CRD initiative, and the way they have laid this out in the report is the possibility that only the municipalities that say yes will pay, but there'll be many of us municipalities that are highly urbanized and won't actually have any, and then there will be other municipalities like North Saanich, Central Saanich, and probably even Souk as well, that would be highly disproportionately have the agricultural land, that if all the rest of the urbanized areas bow out, then they're the ones that pay even more to try and get their Foodlands Trust in, even though those of us in the urbanized areas would be getting the benefits of having that local food system. So it feels like we should pay. So I have these qualms about the idea that we can each opt in and opt out. It feels like the CRD does it or the CRD doesn't. And it gets just, the funding would be spread evenly that way. So I also, as the previous resident speaker came up and said they were much struck with Mr. Austin's letter, and I went through it kind of point by point, and he backed things up, and he definitely, I did find that some of his points that he had raised, I think were misinterpreted from the report. One of them, for example, saying that only new farmers would be allowed the land. That's not actually in the report. There is a specific bullet point that says, no, this would be available to them all. And we did receive, as a late addition, another letter from Sierra Fair addressing that concern, that no, we're not just leasing it only to new farmers. But it is set up kind of to make things preferentially easy for new farmers. And the other one was, he raises the idea of there being marketing funding used and that they would be marketing the individual farmers, and that was not what they would be doing either. It would be marketing that we had a food lands trust and kind of building up. It sounded like another bit of marketing for local food, basically, to get people and, jazzed about their local food and going out to these things in the hopes that we would be able to raise more grant money from it. He had another thing about that there would be no business. They don't expect a business plan. They actually do have a bullet here on page 15 saying a business plan and value proposition alignment with the parcel's agricultural capabilities. So that would be assessed. So there are a number of the things that I kind of do feel better that perhaps he was being too critical or had misunderstood some of it. And then, of course, there are other issues that he raised that are, just that whether or not, as Councillor Fowler said, this was the best use of, if we were going to be raising large pots of money, if this was the most effective and efficient way to actually promote local food. And his voucher system, I thought, oh, that's actually kind of cool. But that's another day and another discussion. So I guess to bring it back down then, it would be, if we were going to refer to the staff, I would hope that we would be looking primarily, or hoping to get staff to look primarily at whether or not the NGO model would be the most effective use, and whether or not we have more capacity with other staff in the CRD or with other municipalities to push on having it be CRD wide instead of having to assess it purely farm as a municipality.
Thank you. Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm generally supportive of this, and I guess one of the, I'm looking at staff doing a fairly light report on this and focusing on really just a few key things. My understanding is that this would be proposed as a CRD service, which means there's going to have to be a service establishing bylaw, and really it's going to matter to us what it says, and anything we say now won't really matter unless we vote in favor of that service establishing bylaw. So the decision we make tonight really is only going to be conceptual. Obviously a concern is going to be cost, and yes, we're not going to contribute land. They're talking about approximately $130,000 a year, and they're suggesting for Sydney that would be about $1.91 per capita, but that depends on how many municipalities participate. So I think obviously one of the elements in the staff report is going to be, kind of process and cost. And if it is going to be a trust, there'll be a trust document as well that actually lays out what the farmland trust is. And the consultant's report goes through a lot of the background, but, again, like to see the trust document. So these are things that we don't have tonight that will eventually come forward, and staff's not going to tell us what's going to be in the trust document. I would simply be interested in one step in the process is there will be something like that. In terms of the merits of the different approaches, the one thing that immediately comes to mind about using an NGO or anybody but the CRD to actually operate the thing is that CRD salaries are actually pretty high, and it's union as well. And if they're dealing with an NGO doing a lot of the functions, it's probably going to be a lot more cost effective. No criticism of CRD staff, but getting them to, they would probably be very well paid farmers. So anyway, I'm supportive of the concept generally, and supportive of staff giving us just the critical details, and seems to me the real decision is going to be down the road when we see that CRD service establishing bylaw.
Any further comments? We had many presentations when it came to CRD before it's gone out to the municipalities, and as indicated during public participation, I wanted to address Sydney's original support. that came along with Central Saanich and North Saanich. And really that was to proceed with what we have before us now. That was in principle what information would we need to look at, business case, I'll call it the philosophical side in terms of government being involved in holding the land in a trust and providing input costs to make it affordable for farmers to lease, given the current situation with agricultural land, farmland in and out of the agricultural land reserve. So that's the level of support that Sydney had at the time, and so we now have another decision to make with regards to support. There are 3 different questions. One of which, as Mr. Humble has indicated, we don't have land to make available. So it's the other 2 questions. I think there's 2 parts to all of this information that's before us. I think one is what I'll say is the philosophical side in terms of local government becoming involved in a land trust and having local government staff, in this case the CRD, involved in being the high-level farmers, making it affordable for tenant farmers. And then the second part, I think, and I think it's going to be up to council. I don't think we'll look for this in a staff report on the philosophical things. We've seen the pros and cons indicated in the report. I think that's a decision for each of us to make as council. I think the second and larger part of this report is really the business case or the feasibility study. And I think for myself, looking at it as just business, when you look at revenues and expenses and benefits, it highlights in the report that one of the major benefits is to improve food security on Vancouver Island, or improve food security in southern Vancouver Island, where we are. There's no mention in this multi-page document in terms of how food security would be measured today, in terms of what percentage of food is grown locally for consumption. And there's no indication under the scenarios they present in the business case that what would be the addition to food security if we in fact moved forward at some level of engagement. So I think the staff discussion would be more on some of the particulars with regards to the business case and the information that is provided or perhaps not provided that might lead us to be of help to us in a decision. Without any further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to item 13D, which is a pedestrian pathway connection proposal via Ray Creek and Peter Grant Parks. We have a letter from the Eaglehurst Developments dated April 27th, a letter from Mr. Wolf, and he spoke this evening, and we have a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation to refer to staff for a report.
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. I would actually really look forward to finding out what's involved in putting in the bridge, how it's going to impact us. I think the idea of increasing the connectivity between Eaglehurst and through into Ray Creek is valid and important. I think it fits with our vision, our mandate to increase walkability and to be out and enjoying the parks. I think the gentleman was quite right when he was talking about the walking distance would be dramatically cut down for the people who are coming from that area of North Saanich. For myself, I live in the area. I would love to be able to do a circuit walk through there. I see it as a benefit, and I hope that the parties can work together, and look forward to seeing what is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Fallett. Just through the mayor to staff, are we further along in the discussions with the Summergate individuals that seem to have some concerns with it? Is there anything more to add to that side of it?
No, I don't believe we've had any recent discussions with that I'm aware of with the Summergate folks, and I think that would definitely have to happen as well, and be part of the sort of the decision making, and be having a dialogue with some of those residents.
I guess my other question would be to staff as well is, we're talking about a bridge, and so I'm wondering, will we do some kind of environmental assessment beforehand and see how that might impact the areas that the bridge would have to go across, if there's any kind of, disruption of, I don't know, rabbit holes or anything that's sort of living in that area? Because you were putting something man-made into an area where there isn't anything.
Through the mayor, to Councillor Gunner, I believe the bridge component is actually, and again, I would need to confirm this, is actually on North Saanich land.
Okay.
And again, I could be wrong, but I believe it is anyway, or at least
Okay.
a significant portion. But it's the trail connection afterwards that is on the Sydney portion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm supportive of or endorse the comments made by Councillor Fallett. The process that we've engaged in is there will be a meeting with myself, Mayor Orr, Mr. Humble, and his counterpart, Mr. Tanton, in North Saanich, with a representative from the development company of Eaglehurst this Thursday. We then look to take a next step. We really need to look at, have a consideration of the site, the distances we're talking about. We're not even quite sure how close the creek is actually to the Sydney-North Saanich boundary and those sorts of things. And then we look to engage the Residents Association representatives from Eaglehurst. And again, with Summergate, when this idea was initially proposed, there was some concern expressed by Summergate, and we would certainly want to have engagement with both of the residential neighborhoods. So we look forward to moving this forward and bringing back reports to council and the community. Now, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a very brief comment that I really liked this, just because I thought it was so adorable that this is a brand new community, brand new neighborhood. It's still under construction, and they've already got something to rally around and get to know each other about. And I thought that was just so great and touched my cold little heart. And that it's a literal bridge between our two municipalities that are finally starting to work together. And we've got this excuse to have the two communities and the neighbors actually get together. And I just thought, sorry, it was so cute, I had to say something. So I'm hoping that the conversations between the neighbors and the mayors will be as full of puppies and rainbows. So this, I envision now in my head with this bridge, the bridge over previously troubled water.
Thank you for that encouragement. I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll move to item 13E, which is climate action, a letter from the City of Victoria with regards to expansion of public transit ridership dated April 29th.
I'll move receive for information.
I'll second.
Discussion? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I would have been comfortable simply receiving this for information and let it pass by because I did not think it was a good suggestion, but I wanted for the record, because I know that we've declared a climate emergency and there may be people in the public who are wondering why are we not endorsing that, because it came forward as a climate action. But this is not a climate action, I don't believe. Primarily because the people for whom cost is a factor when riding transit are already people who are so poor they probably don't have cars. This is not inducing anybody to get out of their car. It may be a social benefit, and that there may be people, I went back to see, I know that the BC Transit Alliance in 2017 had a survey at Car Free YYJ where they were asking people and kind of building their case for their big push for the new bus lanes, to see whether that was something that came up. And affordability was the second most popular choice that people said, they had a criticism of BC Transit. But then looking at the individual comments, it seems that those would probably have been from people who were senior citizens when they changed the structure of the rates for seniors, or they went from having transfers to now having the full day pass. And so for a lot of people, that went from being like a $2.50 fee that usually got them where they were going to now they're going to always have to pay $5. But these are for people who are already constant bus riders due to their income. So I feel like if there are people who are struggling financially and we need to help them subsidize their transportation, that there are better, more targeted ways to do that than to make it free for everyone. If it's a climate initiative, that means we're trying to induce people out of cars. We're inducing people who already have enough money to take their cars. And for those people, it's not because the bus isn't cheap. The bus is already far cheaper than gas right now. I calculated it out and it cost almost $10 to go to my mom's house in Langford in gasoline. And it's only $5 to go by bus, but it would take me 6 hours round trip versus an hour and a half, round trip. So that's why people aren't using the bus when we're commuting down the peninsula, is that there's a lack of convenience and service level right now. So this proposal would actually be removing funding, the guaranteed funding they already have, right at the very time we're trying to actually build the ridership by increasing the service levels. And we just, a few weeks ago, March 11th, was when it was in our agenda that BC Transit has this 25-year plan where they're rolling out all of these new routes and the new buses, and they're kind of counting on that funding. And what we'd be doing is hucking a wrench in right at this moment to say, okay, now you have to figure out where you're going to get new funding from. One of the things they floated was putting it onto property taxes, which I calculated out meant for every person in the CRD to replace it was going to be $220 per household per year, which means that a bunch of people were going to be paying for something that a lot of them were not going to be able to use for several years until all of those additional buses and routes are actually built out. Meaning for those people, it probably was not going to be saving them money by making that bus free at that time. They were still going to have their car. And until they actually use the bus later, should they make that choice, should that become an option for them based on the new routes and buses that came, then they might actually save money. So what I would like to see, and perhaps I will make my own motion about it sometime later, will be us actually taking measures to maybe look at accelerating that 25-year plan. If we want to make a climate action and expand transit, we should be looking at ways to actually raise additional money to let transit go forward with that. I'm not sure, again, though, whether we need to, given that they're going to spend $21 million to put in those new fare boxes that are going to make it so that people can pay without having cash. And that's going to be a huge boon, because that's probably the second most popular reason people don't currently get on the bus when they could, is that they don't actually have correct change or cash at all. So I'd like to wait and see what happens after we get those new ones in, and then talk about accelerating transit from there.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Similar comments. I concur with Councillor Duncan. When I look at this, it just doesn't seem to me very a responsible approach. Like in their first sentence, they say, "We don't know how it will be achieved, but we hope by working together." Like, it just doesn't seem very well thought out to me. That let's wish something to happen, and maybe some money will come and we can do this wonderful thing. And if there was a money tree somewhere, that would be maybe a fine idea. But, I note that, for the pilot, they're talking about eliminating user fees for people 18 years of age and younger. Well, like Councillor Duncan says, I mean, those aren't people that are driving cars anyways, so it doesn't really make any difference to the environment, I don't think. And there's a cost to everything, so it's obvious. You stop, if we're going to pay for that, what's the cost of that going to be? And if that means possibly reductions in service and routes, I mean, it's just not a good idea, in my opinion. So.
Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support the comments that I'm hearing. I'm wondering if we should consider actually writing a letter back that tells them that we don't support this, as opposed to just receive it and don't bother saying anything.
Yeah, I would support that. I will.
We have a motion on in front of us to table. Of course, somebody could do, to receive. Somebody could do a subsequent motion, but it might make sense just to withdraw the motion to receive and put forward a motion that we write back indicating we don't support.
I will withdraw the motion.
Did I second that?
I'll withdraw.
Okay.
So we have the mover and the seconder withdrawing the motion.
So I'll move that we write back indicating that we don't support the proposal for the various reasons that Councillor Duncan's mentioned.
I second that.
Okay, I think, yes, if we're going to write that sort of a response, rather than just saying we don't support it, we would have to give reason. Does staff feel we have sufficient notes to craft? I'm personally not in favor of saying we don't support it. I'm fine with receiving it. I think Victoria Council has received ample feedback throughout the region and the Premier directly with regards to the proposal. One comment I'd like to make is that this does not mean that myself and I believe my fellow council do not support very strongly improvements in transit service and infrastructure in our region. It's a high priority for us. This purports to improve that, but it doesn't really bring a reasoned approach to how you would actually proceed to fund it, existing operations or growth operations. So I won't be supporting the motion to oppose, but I appreciate Councillor's view. Councillor Rintoul.
I'm not particularly sure that there's lots of things coming out of Victoria that I don't support, that I don't write letters about. But I think if we were going to write a letter as opposed to what we don't support about it, I would rather put some of the positives in there that we noted around opportunities for increased routes, for example, opportunities to increase riderships in other manners in which we would support, as opposed to pointing out the lack of puppies and rainbows in their existing proposal. So I mean, I'll vote in favor of it, but I do think we should try and take the positive aspects to point out to our colleagues in Victoria. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Myself. The motion carries. Thank you. Then we have item 13F, request for additional bike racks. We have two emails dated from residents, one dated April 16th, another one May 3rd.
I'll move that we ask staff to prepare a report on adding additional bicycle racks throughout the town.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor O'Keefe?
Yes, so a couple things I was thinking in terms of location is we're opening that huge parking lot, Mary Winsbeer, 167 car spaces, and I wish we had thought about is there going to be more bike racks there? So maybe that's one location for staff to look at. And also, I was looking at, we have beautiful lawn here in front of Town Hall, nice grass. However, it seems to me also a great location I wouldn't mind losing some of the grass and putting some more bike racks right out front here. It's a good location for people who are going to the waterfront. It's kind of off the beaten, it's off the main drag of the Beacon track. And what I hear on Beacon is it's crowded there, it's hard to find space for bikes, but something right here on our nice little street here, it's out of the way, lots of space. So I would ask staff that perhaps that's one thing. And that also, getting back to the BIA parking map again, whether that map includes locations around the town where people can park bikes.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had also thought of locations, though I like Councillor O'Keefe, she goes full in, like the town of Sydney will be committed to bike racks. Based on, it was the EV charger letter that got me thinking of it, though when I wrote to staff to ask about it, I got the parking lot wrong. It's lot F that's on the corner of Bevin and 3rd, next to the new Good Fortune restaurant. And there are these 2 parking stalls, and they also have the EV chargers in the back, right? There are 2 stalls that are hybrid parking. And I said, well, where did these come from and why are they there? I've never seen a car parked there. I'm sure there must be a couple people with hybrids out there who think that this is theirs. But it feels like because this is such a prime location and we have 2 stalls that have sat there with virtually nobody even deciding to break the law and test whether they can park there. Why don't we put bike racks in this location on those 2 stalls? This would be a wonderful location for some secure overnight storage bike locks or bike racks. One thing I have heard just operating my own business is people asking me about overnight storage because they want to be able to take the bus up the peninsula, but then they can't get the bus out to where they work or out to their home, and they want to be able to transfer to their bike and then get their last mile. Last mile transit bike is a really big thing over in Denmark, so it seems like a good model. And this is a location that's less than 2 blocks from where we have our main bus stops for the 70-72 routes that go down to Victoria. It's the closest place I can think of that the town already has space that we could do this. And this might actually help get us some of those transit riders we were just talking about. It would be another climate initiative thing because it would promote more bike users. And it's using, again, very underutilized parking space right in the heart of the town. There is currently a bike rack in that lot. It's in a terrible location right at the back where I don't even know if a lot of people know it's there. And 95% of the time you can't access it because somebody's decided to park their car in front of it so no one can scratch them. So I think in that location, and just today I went down to the Beacon Services thrift store, and there were 4 bikes, 5 including mine, parked right out front that building because there are no racks there. And then if you go up to Starbucks, there's usually bikes all along the wall there. That having a bike rack right and visible right on that side of that road would be probably bringing a lot of bikes away from just cluttering up the sidewalks and in front of those businesses. So hopefully when staff have their report, they can consider that location for either an open rack or both, an open rack and a couple secure ones for those commuters.
Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, I definitely support some more bike racks in town. And one thing you notice when you walk around the streets of Sydney is we have a lot of cyclists. So I'm actually surprised we haven't put more bike racks up before now, and that more people haven't complained, to be quite frank. But I love Councillor O'Keefe's idea, like putting bike racks right in front of Town Hall, because it sets a great example, and perhaps will encourage the people who work in the building to ride their bike to work. And I think, it sends a great message if you go right at the town of Sydney, and what do you have there? You got bike racks, you got an EV charger. It says a lot about our town hall and our community, the people that live here. So, thanks.
Just a few comments. First, just immediate on the comment, staff here in the building do have a storage area for bicycles, and there are staff who do ride. The second is that I think this is a good idea. And support it, but we need to, and I've had a discussion with staff, and they're certainly aware of the many variables with this topic. First, there's different users. So we have a situation where we have employees who are working in the downtown, and they don't have a place to park their bicycle because their business doesn't have a place in their business to do that, and they would. Because it would be outside, and if they're going to cycle to work, and preferably year-round, their preference is for secure weather-protected storage, and we don't currently have that available in town. And then, as Councillor Duncan mentioned, we have commuters taking transit, so they will bring their bicycle to get to transit in Sydney, and perhaps use 2 of the busiest stops at Beacon and 5th, and so in meetings we've had with the Victoria Transit Commission, they're certainly appreciative of why can't we find more room on buses for bicycles. Well, it's because you can only have a bus so long, and so you can only put 2 or 3 bicycles on the front. But some of those users don't actually require their bicycle at the other end. They require it to get from where they live to the transit. And then there are the people who do need to take their bicycles, and they need to go that last mile when they get off the bus. We have visitors who come to town and frequent the cafes or other establishments. And so I think there's definitely different 4 or 5 different users for these, and some will use open bike racks, some will want weather-protected, secure storage. I can remember in Victoria a couple of years, a good idea, I think it started with Mountain Equipment Co-op, is they convinced the town to allocate 2 public parking spaces on the street in front of their building, just to an overhead shelter. So it's not totally secure, but it's partially weather protected. So there are different levels we can go. This takes me to the last and important topic, and that is budget. Is that council has passed a sizable budget this year with many initiatives. This was not one of the items that we brought forward at the time. You could see spending tens of thousands of dollars on if you start getting into secure weather protected shelters and the space. So I'm in favor of a staff report presenting options, but I think we would have to go lightly in this year and actually consider it a pilot project, if you will, in terms of whose needs are we wanting to address and how are we addressing those needs, and then putting something in place to experiment, if you will, or pilot that. I see Mr. Newcomb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, just a reminder that I believe a budget item for an active transportation plan was included this year, so that is something that is on the horizon, and we'd look at this issue in a very comprehensive way as a part of that project. So there may be opportunity for sort of an interim solution and then a longer range, bigger picture solution as well.
Thank you for that comment. And I think given that we have nearly 400 businesses operating in the downtown in particular, not that we wouldn't want additional bike storage perhaps in other business districts, whether it's Harbour Road or West Sydney or throughout the community, that it would be, I think and staff is already aware of this, to perhaps request that the BIA take a survey of its memberships in particular businesses, and you could hear from different businesses, whether they be a Starbucks or a restaurant or another store, in terms of what they feel their needs are for their employees or for their patrons or for their visitors with regards to bicycles. So I know staff has lots of notes already and has added to those this evening. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We now move to item 14. We have 2 bylaws to review. The first is bylaw number 2164, miscellaneous fees and charges. We have amendment number 17 and a staff report dated May the 6th.
I'll move first reading.
Second.
Discussion? I'll just, at this time, if I can go to the right place, mention that the town has several bylaws with regards to fees. But this particular bylaw is referred to the miscellaneous fees and charges, which is a catch-all for a series of fees and charges. And there are just two types of changes that are being proposed tonight. One is with regards to development services and the parking rates in the Bevin and 2nd Street parking lot. So currently our rates are below the private lot in Port Sydney, significantly below the private lot. Staff has reviewed the information in terms of usage. So for example, there is very little hourly usage where there is other usage. So they've refined the charges and increased them gradually. And the second increase is with regards to parks and town facilities, and it is for the rates, help me out here. At the Nor Health Room. So again, the Shoal Center, or Beacon Community Services, does the rentals of those, and they have experience in room rentals. And with some of the upgrades that have happened over time at Nelhorth Room, they feel an increase to the minimum rental is proposed. So those are the changes. We have a mover and a seconder. I'll call a question on first reading. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll move second reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous.
Move third reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Second bylaw we have is bylaw number 2173, the tax rate for 2019. We have at a previous meeting moved first, second, and third reading, and we have a recommendation that the bylaw be adopted.
Move adoption.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We have no new business. We'll move to correspondence for information.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to item 17A. Councillor Fallot has a notice of motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the beginning of this term, I was appointed to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee. I'm just going to do a little bit of background to come up to the motion. And during that term of attending the meetings, some concerns started to come up with how the committee was being run, and it just seemed a little loose, and there were some issues that were going on, and both Councillor Heather Gartshaw from the District of North Saanich and myself were talking about it, and we did a little bit of research, and some more questions came up. And over the time, we've also had conversations with colleagues who have served on this committee in the past, and they also echoed similar concerns. In fact, some of the appointees just simply stopped attending the meeting, and that wasn't a good thing. Councillor Gartshaw and I decided that we had spoken with our respective mayors, and we decided that we should pursue this and look at raising this question of what this committee actually does. It was established over 30 years ago, and it currently receives $14,000 from the CRD, yet it doesn't have a budget. It does, however, have a travel expense policy and procedure. And on the agenda for next Wednesday, this Wednesday's meeting, there's a recommendation to approve $1,200 for a member of the committee to attend a conference in Las Vegas. The committee does not have a policy to disperse grants, but it does so. During the concerns that Councillor Gartshaw and I had, after speaking to our mayors, we did speak with the CRD chair, Mr. Colin Plant, and ran it past him to ask what he suggested we should be looking at next. And so he said he was going to take it to the board CAO, Mr. Bob Lapham, have a discussion, and they did take a brief look at it. And in fact, one of the things that did concern them was the grant dispersal, and they have since sent a letter to the committee asking them to stop dispersing any grant monies. And so then it was decided that the best way forward would be for the two of us in each of our municipalities to bring forward a notice of motion to our councils, and that is what I'm doing this evening. So whereas Councillor Heather Gartshaw from the District of North Saanich and I have become increasingly concerned about a number of issues related to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, including whether or not the committee is in fact meeting its own mandate, how effective it is in doing so, whether or not it continues to be relevant, and the appropriateness of this being a committee of the Capital Regional District Board. Therefore, be it resolved that Council direct Mayor Cliff McNeil-Smith to work with Mayor Jeff Orr of the District of North Saanich to seek the CRD Board's endorsement of a review of the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee as soon as possible.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Councillor O'Keefe.
So I'm the alternate to that committee. So I have I've attended one meeting, and I got all the minutes and reports. And I guess what my observation is that, so the Youth and Family Justice Committee, I think there's some good information that can come out of there and would be useful for us to know. You know, the thing that struck me when I attended the meeting was we were getting a picture or into what's going on with youth in our community that we don't often get in Sydney. And so things, for example, about what's going on with restorative justice. There was an update about at-risk youth, especially young women, even in Sydney, who are getting involved, coerced into prostitution in our community. So there was a lot of things that were real eye-openers for me, which I think is good for us to have that information. However, what I also found is that I think they've diverged into way too many things. And I think they're all good people wanting to do good things, but I think what they need to do is look at refocusing their energy and what are the things that they're doing that are relevant to local government and that are within, is information that's useful that we can do something with. So I support the idea of not necessarily disbanding the whole committee, but re-looking at it and getting it to refocus their attention.
Councillor Fallon.
Thank you for that, Councillor O'Keefe. It is not our intention to disband the committee. It is our intention that the committee is reviewed. It's over 30 years old. And my understanding from my conversation with Mr. Plant is there hasn't been any oversight and review of this committee, and it is rather loose. There are some good things that come out of it. Having said that, there are 23 voting members of the committee, and the table is filled with a lot of other stakeholders from the police force, from social services and ministries and whatnot. There is no staff person from the CRD that sits there, so that in itself is already a problem. I think the committee needs to be reassessed, as I've said in the motion, to find out whether or not it is actually meeting the mandate as it was originally set out, and whether that mandate is still germane for today. Those agencies that are involved with this committee, it will not impact or affect them whatsoever. The difficulty I have in the past sitting at this committee is we have these great discussions, but nothing comes of it. There's no way to take that information. There are no motions to carry forward. There are no actions that go with it. And even the chair said, I know it takes everybody a while to get up to speed. It took me several years to sort of figure out what this committee's doing. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that is a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And that's what I'm doing with this motion, is asking for your support to take this forward, to have the review by the body that is overseeing this committee. It is the CRD. This committee exists through the CRD. Thank you.
Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
It's a notice of motion.
Oh, it's a notice of motion. Well, do we have to approve to put it on the next agenda? No? Okay, so, thank you.
I'll move adjournment.
Sorry, just a question on procedure. A councillor can bring forward a notice of motion. It was seconded. Councillor could take a vote on whether they wanted to entertain that motion at the next meeting.
Yeah, the officer's indicating that you don't need to necessarily pass a motion associated with that, so it's with respect to a notice of motion being on the next subsequent agenda.
So the councillor brings forward the notice of motion. We don't need a seconder to that. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Wainwright.
Could just
Councillor O'Keefe.
Just a question in terms of process. So in terms of notices of motion, et cetera, when I read the bylaw, the way I read it was a councillor may bring forward a notice of motion, and it may be put on the next agenda. So the way that I read it, it seemed to me to suggest that you could, you didn't have to provide a notice of motion. You could just bring a notice of motion, or just bring up a motion and not provide notice. And so whether, my understanding that it says may, it doesn't say shall, whether that makes a difference.
Yeah, procedurally, there's different processes that council can undertake to bring forward motions or recommendations to council. And in the past, for example, through councillor reports, having a council report and with a recommendation is one way. But then it's established on the agenda. So in order to meet the agenda, you to get on that agenda, you meet the deadline, etc., and it's placed on the the actual agenda for the next subsequent meeting. So that's an alternative way to bring forward a recommendation or a motion through council. The notice of motion is simply another procedural way. The thing with it is it's typically an item that hasn't been reviewed by council, and it's a new item, so it's giving council the courtesy of having basically a heads up that it's going to be brought forward at the next subsequent meeting. It's on the agenda, and council will have an opportunity to deliberate on that particular item, given an opportunity to think about it and look at any potential background research, etc. So different procedures for different municipalities, but ours is articulated in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think notice of motion is is an important process for bringing new business onto an agenda. So we will be debating this motion, deliberating on this motion, and passing a resolution with regards to the motion. And having understood that better this evening, I would suggest with future notice of motions that come forward that we don't need to have the explanation, for the notice of motion or reasons and that sort of thing. That would come out in the deliberations, sort of thing. But thank you for that this evening, and we'll be a little more efficient on process. Thank you. We aren't going in camera this evening, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening.